And they're sitting down at the table, the disciples, and Jesus is listening to them. Here they go again. This conversation just keeps coming up. Who's the greatest? Who's going to be the greatest? John says, well, you know it's me because he loves me the most. Notice, though, that out of all the Gospels, John's the only one that said that about himself. He said it about himself. In the third person, John the beloved. I think John might have had a few moments with some of the other disciples on occasion, his behaviour, and thought about himself. Peter disagreed with John. He says, oh, no, I'm the greatest. When you were scared and the storm was raging and you're hiding in the back of the boat thinking to yourself about how much Jesus loves you, and I'm out there walking on the water. I'm full of faith and I'm loved. I'm the greatest for sure. Hearing all this, all Jesus could see was pride and dirty feet. You look at John 13 and Jesus got up from the meal and took off his outer clothing. There's 3 times in the Bible where Jesus was wrapped. He was wrapped in a manger when he was washing feet, as we'll look at today, and when he was to be buried. He was wrapped for presence, for service, for sacrifice. May that be what your always is that's spoken of as well. Jesus was a rabbi. He came walking into the city and people knew that he was the teacher because of the way that he dressed, because of what he wore. And yet now Jesus stands up from the meal, everyone looking at him, and he takes off that outer robe. And what he did next, I'm sure, left the room speechless. All of those conversations are now silent. You can follow along with me in there, John 13. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. At that moment, there were so many emotions in the room. They realised what he was about to do, and they're thinking, like I know I would instantly, things racing through my head, oh no, I should have done this. Or, oh, we should have hired somebody. We should have been pre-planned for this. I mean, this is a cultural thing. Everybody knows that this should have been covered. And all this is going through the head. But we do know that there was also at least one person in the room thought, oh, there's no way he's touching my feet. Jesus took the form of a servant. At the moment that he was aware of his entitlement to power and authority, he took on a towel, became a servant. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Peter's possibly thinking, God, I saw these are the hands that mixed mud, put it on a man's eye, and he was able to see. These are the hands that everyone he touched became healed. These are the hands that our friend, she died. Jesus came and laid these hands on her. She came alive again and cooked us a meal. These hands are now going to wash my dirty feet. I would feel horrible about that too in that present moment. Jesus replied, you do not realise now what I'm doing. Later, you will understand. Jesus was saying that I'm not just doing something that you should have hired someone else to do this task. I'm doing something that's so much bigger than that. When he'd finished washing their feet, this is so powerful, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. So here's this teacher, Jesus, taking off his authority that he's entitled to in the moment and becoming a servant, and then putting back on that authority again. Yeah, there was silence in the room, I'm sure. Nobody's eating. Nobody's saying a word. But then he asks a question. Do you understand what I've done for you? He was setting an example. This is what he was doing. He was setting an example for us to look for a way that we can leverage those things that, yes, you're entitled to those things, but you leverage them for the sake of those that are less entitled. That's what Jesus did. That's our mission now too. Jesus taught that serving is not just something we do, it is who we are. A servant at our core. That's what we're called to be. What are you always doing? Have you thought of that yet? In Acts 9:36, it says Dorcas was always doing good and helping the poor. What an amazing lady. That should be the reputation of our whole church, all the churches around the world, the church as a whole. Hope Chapel, specifically as you're thinking it today. When people think about the church, they should think, oh, I don't believe what they believe, but goodness me, I'm glad they're in our community. I don't buy into all this Jesus stuff, but I hope my daughter marries one. I hope my son marries one. I like to hire those people. I want to be employed by those people. I don't necessarily embrace all that they talk about, but I'm telling you what, the more that you give those people, the more they invest back into the community. There's nothing better than a wealthy Christian, they reckon. Wouldn't that be so good